Mr. President, let me show you an incredibly revelatory chart. And this chart talks about distribution of average income growth during expansions and what the bottom 90% received versus what the top 10% of families received. And we go back from the period of 49 to 53, 54 to 57, 58 to 60, 61 to 69, 70 to 73, 75 to 79, 82 to 90, 91 to 2000, 2001 to 2007, 2009 to 2012. That's the last information we have. And what this chart shows is that in the last 3 decades after World War II, the vast majority of Americans did well when the economy did well. This is the percentage of new income that went to the bottom 90%, and this is what the top 10% got. They did okay. 10% did pretty well. They got 20% of all the income. But the bottom 90% got 80% of the income. And then 54 to 57 went down a little bit, but the bottom 90% did pretty well. Bottom 90% did pretty well. Bottom 90% did pretty well. Bottom 90% begins to do less well, but they're still getting a majority of the new income. Whoa! What happens in 1982? Well, Ronald Reagan is president, and the good news is we are into trickle-down economics. And here it is. And this chart tells it all. This is what the top 20% got. This is what the top 10% got. This is what the bottom 90% got. And here we are in the last number here where we are today. And lo and behold, the top 10% gets it all. Gets it all. And frankly, this is a metaphor. This is an example of exactly what trickle-down economics is all about. So, early on, when we have a recovery, most of the new income goes to working families and the broad middle class. Since the 1982 period, almost all of the new income goes to the top 1%. And today, as I mentioned, rather unbelievably, all of the new income is going to the top 1%. Mr. President, clearly this is unacceptable. This trend of the rich getting richer and everybody else getting poorer is not what America is about, and it has got to be changed, and we have to rethink the fundamentals of supply-side trickle-down economic theory. And the difficulty that we have, to be frank, is that especially since Citizens United, and especially since the millionaires and billionaires can pour huge amounts of money into the political process, for them, this is great news. This chart is fantastic news. They have won. They contribute to candidates. Candidates go out and tell us we need more tax breaks for the rich, we need more deregulation, and these are the results. So not only do we need to change our economic policies, clearly we need to change campaign finance so the work being done by Congress reflects the needs of working families and not just the billionaire class. Now, Mr. President, let me tell you what I think we should do. I do not believe that we should give more tax breaks to the rich because they're getting richer and their tax rates have gone down. I do not believe we should give more tax breaks to large corporations because there are huge loopholes in our corporate tax system, and we're losing about $100 billion every single year because corporations and millionaires are stashing their money in the Cayman Islands and other tax havens. We have a situation right now in this country, in terms of our individual tax rates, where hedge fund managers who make millions of dollars a year pay an effective tax rate lower than a truck driver or a nurse. That makes no sense to me, nor do I believe it makes sense to the American people. So let me very briefly tell you what I think makes sense and an agenda that will put Americans back to work at decent wages. Number one, you want to create jobs in America, you don't pass the Keystone Pipeline bill. That creates 35 permanent jobs. That creates several thousand construction jobs. If you're serious about, and by the way, that allows a Canadian firm to produce and transport some of the dirtiest fuel in the world, which will only exacerbate the problems of climate change, doing exactly the opposite of what the scientific community tells us we should do. So if we want to create more than 35 permanent jobs, maybe we should be serious about rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, and that is our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, our dams, our levees, our rail system, our airports. Think what America would look like when instead of having a subpar infrastructure, an infrastructure now ranked 12th in the world, we led the world with cutting-edge technology. A $1 trillion investment could put 13 million Americans back to work at good wages. And in my view, that is exactly what we should be doing. Mr. President, right now in this country, we have a significant number of people working at the starvation wage, federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. We must raise the minimum wage to a living wage. And when you do that, provide a pay raise for some 25 million Americans who today are struggling economically. And when you do that, you not only help them, but you also help the economy because, as I mentioned earlier, when these folks have money, they can then spend some money. We have got to provide pay equity for women workers. It is not acceptable that women today earn 78% of what male workers do who do the same job. We have got to deal with the scandal of overtime right now, where you got workers in McDonald's who make $25,000, $28,000 a year, who are quote-unquote supervisors and therefore are exempt from overtime regulations. So they may be working 50 or 60 hours a week, making very little money, and yet because they are quote-unquote supervisors, they don't get time and a half. Ending that and raising that $23,000 threshold to something like $56,000 would provide a huge pay increase for millions and millions of workers. Mr. President, we live in a very, very competitive global economy. And it makes no sense to me that in that economy, we have large numbers of young people who are giving up on the dream of getting a good education and going to college or graduate school, and others are leaving school deeply in debt. We should learn from many of our competitors who say to their young people, you want to go to college? You can go to college regardless of your income because tuition is free. A few months ago, one of the states in Germany was the last state in Germany to do away with tuition. And what one of their political leaders said is, look, we believe that all of our people have the right to go to college and income should not be an impediment, and I agree with that. Mr. President, we need to finally do what I know is very, very difficult for many of the members of this body, and that is take on Wall Street. You have a handful of huge financial institutions that have assets equivalent to 60% of the GDP of the United States of America. They issue half of the mortgages in this country and 2/3 of the credit cards in this country. And I believe that that is just too big. I fear very much about another too-big-to-fail scenario where we have to bail them out. As you know, Republicans recently have pushed through language to take away some of the protections that taxpayers had in Dodd-Frank and once again leave them exposed to bailing out Wall Street when they engaged in dangerous derivative speculation. Lastly, Mr. President, and this is not just an economic issue, although it is a moral issue. We have millions of senior citizens and people with disabilities in this country who are struggling with incredible courage every single day to buy the food they need and buy the medicine they need, and in cold states like mine in Vermont, to heat their homes. This is not just rhetoric, this is reality. There are God knows how many seniors who say, well, you know, I can't buy my medicine if I'm going to heat the house. I can't heat the house if I'm going to buy my nutrition. And we know that all over this country, Meals on Wheels program, there are waiting lines because it's a place for low-income seniors to get their nutrition. And yet we have an effort right now on the part of Republicans to say that, well, yeah, you got millions of seniors trying to get by on $12,000 a year, $13,000 a year, but we're going to cut their benefits. We're going to cut their benefits. Well, they may make that effort, but I will do everything that I can to stop them. And there are very simple remedies to the problems facing Social Security, and we should make a couple of things very clear. Despite a lot of the rhetoric that you hear, Social Security, of course, is paid for by the payroll tax, does not add to the deficit. So take that issue away. Now, the second issue is that Social Security is going broke. Well, simple truth is Social Security is not going broke. Social Security has about $2.6 trillion in its trust fund, can pay out about all benefits owed to all eligible Americans for the next 19 years. And if we want to make Social Security solvent, not for 19 years, because I think we got to extend that, we want to make it solvent for 30 years or 40 years, if we want to do as I believe we should do, not cut benefits, but expand benefits, if we want to do the right thing for our parents and our grandchildren, then I think we defeat every effort out there to cut Social Security. I think we lift the cap on taxable income so that millionaires contribute more into the Social Security Trust Fund. I think we have that moral obligation to our parents and our grandparents. So, Mr. President, let me conclude by saying this. I think the evidence is overwhelming that trickle-down economics is a fraud. It works for the very wealthy. It does not work for working families. The job of this Congress is to protect the middle class and working class and not just billionaire campaign contributors. And with that, Mr. President, I thank you for your indulgence and I yield the floor.